Welcome everybody to Let's Talk Games. My name is Dan. I'm back this week, and with me is the man that's always here, Jamie. How you doing, Jamie?
As I said to Chunt last week, it's quite weird that you call me the traveller and I'm the one that's always here.
Yeah, I did watch the episode last week, and it is such a different feeling just having two people on the pod. Like fun, but yeah, I miss the big guy, you know.
Yeah, it's more of just a chat, but yeah, Chunt's away with his family doing actual human things, as you were away doing last week. It's good that you guys get to do that. What's another human? I don't really see anybody that lives outside my house.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, and you got to take care of the people in your house, don't you, Jamie?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Well, we got a few things to talk about this week. I didn't get to bag on Sony last week, but I will this week. But we're going to start with what we've been playing. Mine's really simple. I've been playing so much Age of Empires, all the time.
I logged onto Discord the other day, or I popped the window open on my computer, and it was just because you and Chunt are at the top, and it just said it's like Dan is playing Age of Empires. I was like, oh, he must be really enjoying Age of Empires.
Well, this week, because Monique's a teacher, so, you know, she has holidays all the time. So now she's on a holiday break, and she's been working on a whole bunch of stuff for our wedding and stuff like that. So I've just let her have the lounge. I'm like, you know, you can have the lounge. Like, I have it all the time, and she just watches TV in the bedroom. So I'm like, you can have it. So I'm like, well, I ain't got much to do, so I'll just go and play Age of Empires on the computer, and I'm having a great time. I suck at it really badly.
It's not an easy game.
I do the same, and I do the same thing every time, like every single time, and I win most of the time. But there's this weird, I don't know, sense of adventure as you're last night. I got down, I was building up my town, and I got attacked, and I got absolutely destroyed, and I was down to 8 people, and I got my 8 people and just sent them off to another part of the map, and I built a new town center and started again, and they kept attacking my wall at my previous place, and it just kept and then I just kept building up, and suddenly I've got a 400 horse army, and I just rode into town, and I won. And it's just things like that where I'm like, this takes me so long. I had another game probably a week ago. I was just caught in this place where I was all against computer, but I had a teammate, and they died very early on. So I was against 2 armies constantly, and I was just going back and forward, and I couldn't put a dint in any of them. And the game ended up lasting 14 hours, all up.
Jesus Christ.
And I managed to win it. And I was like, this is just, yeah, it was great.
You can see why that's satisfying though. It's long to put 14 hours into something, but then if you come out on top, can you imagine if you'd have lost though? You'd have been like, well, that's a waste of time. I
would have been pissed. But the worst thing is, as soon as you win, because you don't see the ending, right? And when you get to the end, the other team just resigns, and it's like, that's it. The first thing you want to do is start a new game, and I'm like, I gotta step back and give myself some space,
do something else with your time.
But that is last 2 weeks. I played a bit more God of War, which I forgot to mention in the last episode 2 weeks ago. So I'm about a quarter of the way through that, but yeah, it's all been Age of Empires for me. So what have you been playing?
Outriders. But before I talk about Outriders, I don't know if I mentioned last week when Chunt and I were speaking that I'd finished, you guys know that I finished the 2nd season of Telltale's Batman series. Man, I'm actually, a week removed from it. I'm still I wish that got to carry on.
Right.
There are rumors that, it's one of the 2 that are being brought back from the dead, because Telltale has effectively been brought back from the dead, right?
Yeah.
Their name and their IP was bought, and they're working on Wolf 2, which wicked. The only kind of teaser we've seen from that looks awesome, but I am hoping that the team that worked on the Batman series do manage to make Series 3 eventually, because the world building and the character development is so strong in that game. Don't get me wrong, it's still a janky Telltale game, but the actual storytelling was really cool. I had a really good time with that. And then yeah, Outriders. So I checked my clock. I've put 24 hours into Outriders. I've finished the whole campaign. I'm at world tier 10 now, I think, and I've done a couple of the expeditions. It's just, as I put it to you guys the other day, it's like I can't remember my exact quote, but it was something along the lines of like Gears of War and something else had a baby with Diablo, and this was like the mutated spawn that it produced, except directed by the team and written by the guys from Sharknado. It does feel cheap, if that makes sense, but the gameplay loop's solid. The gameplay loop's where the fun is. The story is so throwaway. It needn't really be there. I know it's got to be there to serve to push the characters forward, but by the time you hit kind of the end game loop and you're chasing the different tiers of loot, and you get so powerful, like so overly powerful, that it's just fun to mow the enemies down. And at the higher levels, the higher challenge tiers, it is difficult. It's not an easy game. The difficulty really does ramp up. And the expeditions, trying to do those solo is a fucking nightmare, to be perfectly honest. Like, you can tell you need other players. So I think I'll get to the point where I get through the Eye of the Storm, which is after you've done the expeditions and you kind of, it's the end boss, if you will. And when I get to that, I think that'll probably be my jumping off point. And then the plan is I've still got the last episode of Life is Strange Before the Storm to finish. The prequel.
Okay.
I bought the whole thing years ago. And just, with the new game kind of being announced and things like that, I was like, I didn't finish that. I've got it installed. It's sat on my Xbox ready to finish. So that'll be at some point over the weekend, hopefully. But yeah, Outriders, solid experience, very much a me type game. Chunt will get some stuff out of it. I know you enjoyed the demo. If you were looking to go into that game for the story, don't, because it's
just
not
collapses on itself.
It's not that it collapses on itself. It's just that it's so full of just sci-fi nonsense bullshit and bad acting. It doesn't take itself seriously. Did you ever play Bulletstorm? So
No.
I know it's very much People Can Fly's MO, but it doesn't take itself seriously. And there's some really like cliche and cringe dialogue moments that it's almost like they know that we know that they know they're doing it on purpose. And it's like, are they though? Or were they genuinely trying to make a cohesive story? Because it is stuff like you pointed out, like, you're talking to like this god called like Moloch or something, and then it's like, oh, Seth's over there. But do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, there's some real disconnection in the way that it's written. But for me, that's not why I wanted to play it. I'm really into my like looter type games, and this does very much feel like, if Avengers would have had this gameplay loop with Avengers storytelling, it would be everybody's favorite video game. And I stand by that. People Can Fly should have developed Avengers, and the team that wrote Avengers should have worked with them on it. If you smash those two games together, you've got the perfect looter shooter. And it's just a shame, obviously. Like, Square have been pumping things out, but yeah, if you were looking at your number one reason to play that game being the story, I'd think twice about spending money on it, especially at full retail. I'd wait for a sale, because you don't get the luxury of GamePass over there on Sony's side. But yeah, I've not played anything else, just Outriders, and yeah, I finished Batman.
Did you get the same issues that other people have been having?
No, a lot of the issues that have been spoken about have been PC centric. So, this is one time where I'm glad to have not played a game on PC. It's been a pretty flawless experience. There has been some jank with some of the story stuff, like cutscenes, but to be fair, after 2 or 3 hours of trying to pay attention to the story, I skipped the cutscenes anyway. I was just more interested in where am I going next? What am I doing next? So I didn't really get the chance to pay attention to it. I'd say the only issue I had full stop was an issue where I couldn't get through a door, like a checkpoint. So it's like you need to click to hit the checkpoint, and the prompt wasn't coming up for me to push X on the controller to move past the checkpoint. That's the only thing. But yeah, other than that, absolutely no issues whatsoever. Pretty flawless experience, to be honest.
I feel stupid because I never even thought about it when we're talking about people can fly, and we're like, oh, very Gears like. It's very Gears like, and we
They
keep
worked
talking
on it.
about it. But these are the same. They're the same people that did Gears of War Judgment. So
Yeah.
it never clicked in my mind to put the two together because I always just thought of the mainline Gears games. But I read somewhere today that over 50% of the sales in the UK at the moment are on PlayStation, which makes sense because most Xbox players would have Game Pass, so that wouldn't count.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's. I think they've done pretty well for themselves. So
They've if you look at the Steam charts, which it's been circulated all over the place on the internet, like its peak numbers were higher than Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 3's peak numbers, which should indicate just how good the hype behind it was. And I think a large portion of that is down to, we're in a bit of a lull. There's nothing coming out. Smart move by Microsoft to get it on Game Pass because it's like I said, I've got 24 hours play out of it so far. I'll probably get to around the 30ish mark and put it down, which to me is a market of absolutely fantastic return on investment when Game Pass costs me like $10.99 a month. Like it's.
I think a demo was really smart to stand out amongst a bunch of other games that weren't coming out at the moment.
Absolutely.
Same with when Resident Evil.
Even people like this. I wouldn't call this a U-type game, but you played the demo and was like, do you know what? I'm actually keen to check this out, and it could be fun to all play together after we played the demo together. So you've got people like that it managed to capture as well, and then you've got the audience like me that would have probably played it anyway.
Yeah, no, exactly. All right, let's get on to some topics. So the first one I've got written down here is E3 2021 is going digital. It's coming back. So we have here that where did I write it down? So it's going to go ahead as an online only event. The digital show will stretch across 3 days, beginning the 12th of June and ending on the 15th of June. The publishers that are going to be attending is Nintendo, Xbox, Capcom, Konami, Ubisoft, Take-Two Interactive, Warner Brothers Games, and Koch Media. I guess I'm going to ask you what everybody's been talking about this week is there's no PlayStation on there. And what are your thoughts on PlayStation not being there?
As I said to you guys the other day, Jim Ryan doesn't believe in industry events. It's like he doesn't believe in backwards compatibility or why anybody would want to play old video games. No, you see, it's tone deaf. I get why they wouldn't want it. So the whole thing with the ESA is you pay to be a member of that association, and you pay to have, booths at events. This is a digital event, right? But you can guarantee that those publishers have all had to, and developers have had to pay to have a slot inside of E3,
time,
even though it's digital. So smart by Sony to go, we don't actually need you. We can do our own thing and it'll be successful. And it will. But I don't know. I think there needed to be some solidarity this year kind of across the board and just go, not necessarily with E3, but let's, as we've spoke about a bunch, let's get all of our stuff together and put it out in like 1 week. Have that E3 feeling, because last year just burnt everybody out. Like it was just non-stop, relentless, and it was all for the most part not even news. People making, different publishers were making huge statements about, oh, we're announcing all of our stuff here, and then you can check this out in a month. It was all throwaway, and the amount of time that was wasted by people like us watching and kind of covering those events, it's nonsense. So I think it's right in that aspect. I think it's a test to see if it's going to kind of fall away and die this year, to be honest. I think it might. Do you think it's going to go back in person next year? Or do you think that's too soon in terms of, having a bunch of people in an arena?
Well, who knows with America and what's going on right now? They're getting vaccines and they're thinking that it's all sorted. Like we're getting vaccines and it's all going to be going back to normal. But I think I tweeted the other day, like over here in Australia, we're watching America. People trying to figure out why the apple hit them on the head and we're over here yelling. It's called gravity. We figured this out like a while ago. So I'm not confident in next year being available either. Maybe to a smaller extent, but I don't know if they'd put on an event if it was a smaller extent either. I understand that the idea of getting everybody together, like all the publishers together, and being like, this is good for gaming. This is good to have everybody. I agree with having it back and having it over 3 days and that. But even before COVID happened and everything, like a couple of years ago, Sony already withdrew from E3.
Yeah, they did.
I feel like this is just them following on with the plan that they already had. So I don't think it's like a fuck you to E3, because I think they did that 2 years ago.
Yeah, why would they go back? That's what I mean. I get that kind of side and sentiment of it. They don't need to pay them to do their marketing for them when they can do it well enough themselves.
And don't get me wrong, they're still going to have an event probably a week before. And I have feelings, if we believe rumors about them making a Silent Hill game with Konami or something like that, like they're going to still have a presence there. Like if Konami's rocking up with stuff to show, because how much stuff can Konami show without everybody going absolutely apeshit at them? Like it has to be goodwill games that they're going to bring. So I think there'll still be a presence around.
Yeah, their presence will still be felt around it. I just think that the more stuff that happens, where it's been pretty solid now for the last even year, right? So since all of this kind of stuff started last year, it's been pretty constant that Sony have just done the opposite to what everybody else want to do. It's like the whole industry goes, we're moving in one direction, right? And Sony just go, nah, we're doing this. And what they're doing is not evolving alongside the industry. And you made this point earlier, I can't remember again exactly what you said. You may be able to. I was kind of just scanning as you were sending stuff through. That how much longer can they compete? Like how much longer can Sony keep doing what they're doing and not get left behind? Like you said, did you say they wouldn't be the same company they are now in 10 years? But it's like, well, I feel like everybody's pulling in one direction and Sony just going, no, we're doing this because this is making us the most money. Not to say they're totally anti-consumer, because they're not. They're doing some quite good consumer-focusing stuff. But when you look at how I feel like they're the butt of everybody's joke at the minute. You know what I mean? And that's not a good look.
And it's they're the butt of everybody's joke. And the thing is, like, it's not unwarranted jokes either. Like, there's always people going a bit far with it. But the reason why if I'm a Sony fan, which I don't think I'm overly one, but if I'm a Sony fan, then the thing that you want to do is criticize them to make sure that they do the right thing and get things better. Like we talked about a few month or so ago, when Xbox tried to up their pricing for Xbox Live or whatever it was. People called them out and they did the right thing. Like that's what should happen. Like you criticize the companies for what they do, and then you hope that they do the right thing. So for everybody that's watching that wasn't part of our conversation, it was a movie thing, but basically there was a deal struck with Sony, the movie division, and Netflix, just basically that all Sony's pictures will get a first look deal with Netflix when it goes to streaming after they've gone to cinemas and that. And all I was thinking about in that space and in the PlayStation space, in their two biggest mediums, PlayStation being their biggest, movies being their second, depending on how well their movies are doing, they're relying a lot on services that they don't necessarily have. So with the movies, they don't have a streaming service. They don't have Disney Plus. They don't have HBO Max. They're not Amazon. Any of these things, and they're relying on Netflix to shield their movies. And how long can you, like, they'll get money from licensing those deals, but nowhere near how much money all these other studios are making. And then on, we just talked about GamePass, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. How long can you last just selling the games like you currently do? I think there are deals being made which, the Jade Raymond deal. I think there is a lot to gain by selling your game at full price as a PlayStation title, knowing that that PlayStation demographic, and I'm one of them, will tend to continue to buy those God of War, Spider-Man, Uncharted type games, and you can make considerable more money there than maybe if Microsoft was offering you a certain amount of money to put it on Games Pass. But the difference is with Games Pass is that you get guaranteed money.
Yep.
That's less risk. It's less risk averse, which is not necessarily a bad thing because these are just companies that are trying to employ people and keep them going. So it's a risk versus reward thing with Sony. And I don't know how many. We always talk about how games are getting more expensive and developers are becoming less risk averse. But if they know that they have money guaranteed to come in to keep the lights on, there's going to be more people that go over to that service.
Exactly, and we'll see it with the developers as well. I know it's a topic you've got on the slate, but even with Kojima and like the rumors circulating around, is he going to make a game for Xbox? Like basically, because Phil Spencer's rocked up and gone, we want your next game, we'll fund it, it'll go to Game Pass. How can you say no? Do you know what I mean? Like, how can you say no as a developer? And there was a quote from him earlier in the week, again, and this is not verbatim, but kind of Cliff Note version, that so many games that are on Game Pass or are coming to Game Pass would not have been made under the traditional model. Because as you said, like developers are risk averse, they want to make sure that they make their money back on the game that they're producing. And maybe if they wanted to try something that's a little bit out there, rather than funding it themselves, Microsoft are going, we'll fund it, put it on Game Pass. And you get to try these little experiences or these different approaches to games, and it's so good for everyone. And don't get me wrong, like we spoke at length about how much money they're making, like, and this whole illusion that, oh, how long can they sustain funding all these games for? Fucking Microsoft. They've got a bottomless pit of money. Like, they can keep funding whatever they want to. And will the service get more expensive? Of course it will. Netflix gets more expensive every year. Like, Disney Plus will get more expensive. It's a service. It will rise with inflation, probably at a higher rate than inflation, as is typical for most entertainment mediums. But that's dialing it back to how Sony managed to get to this. And we spoke a little bit a few weeks ago about how they can compete. I don't even think it's about competing now. I think it's just pivoting their IP, their property, their licenses, everything. Like, they have to pivot to this type of model. There's the argument, obviously, as I think you put it quite eloquently a few weeks back, like Sony are not Netflix, they're the cinema, right? They're the cinema experience. But the way the world's going, like, these streaming services are producing better content than the cinemas are producing.
Yeah, well, because I made that comment early last year, and then I heard everyone else starting to make it. I'm like, damn, I should have put that out there. But yeah, my thing was always like Sony is cinema and Xbox is Netflix. And then when you say that, there's so many people that will come out and start arguing one way or the other. I'm like, no, the idea is that you want both, because both are valued experiences. And while you might pay more to go to cinema, sometimes it's a great experience to have that. But also, I like just putting on Netflix and just being able to play a game, or watch a movie, or whatever. Like, both are good to have. But also, in saying that, and that was early last year that I said that, come to now, right now, I'm like, no one can go to the cinema, or no one wants to go to the cinema at the moment. So in that metaphor, like, how long are people going to want to go to PlayStation and go to Sony to play those games if the value on this other side is coming, and they start to put in the same amount of effort that Sony are doing on the other end?
The value proposition is the extreme point, right? Though, because and we can use Outriders as the example. So, like, we're not specifically talking first party, you're talking platform, right? So as a platform, you have Xbox, you have PlayStation, you got Nintendo, but again, we leave Nintendo to do what the fuck Nintendo does because they're Nintendo and they're never going to conform. But take Outriders as your example. Okay, yeah, like you said, the sales, like especially in the UK, like were on PlayStation, but that's because people on Xbox didn't need to buy it.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you bought that game on PlayStation for full retail price of $59.99 in the UK, that is 6 months of Game Pass. The value proposition is so skewed, and having it all kind of, when you put it into perspective like that, okay, yeah, there maybe isn't something, say, next month that you want to get invested in, or the month after, maybe still. So it could be 2 or 3 months until there's kind of anything that strikes your fancy, but you're still like quids in, you're still up in terms of monetary value for what you're getting in terms of service versus investment. So that's the part that I don't know how much longer they can continue down that road for. You can rely on God of War and Horizon and those types of things, and Spider-Man. You can, but for how long? At what point does everybody kind of go, nah, no more. I'm paying my subscription. Done.
And then, and this is probably a good set. We're jumping around to a bunch of different topics because I want to talk about the Kojima thing too, but this probably segues into the MLB going to Game Pass day one, which was, I think it was announced like the day after you guys must have recorded or something.
Yeah.
Like, and this is a very tricky situation. I don't think it relates to anything like PlayStation games coming to Xbox, stuff like that, or Games Pass. But so talking about like Sony falling asleep at the wheel, the idea that MLB proper is publishing the game on Microsoft on the Xbox One consoles, and I'm curious with that licensing deal what the arrangement is, and how can a first party game from Sony be a day one Games Pass game on Xbox? Like, how does that slip through the deal that they made? Like, I get MLB saying we want to go to other consoles, but how does Sony say, all right, we'll do that, but listen, you can't have it go to Game Pass. Like, you can't do this. You can't, like, how do they talk about mismanagement, which feels like a lot of mismanagement happening at Sony? I don't know how that falls through the cracks of a game that they've made.
I don't know if it's a case of even falling through the cracks. I think it's just a case of, as you said, it's mismanagement. And to be honest, I know I said a few weeks ago, it just smacks of Sony. No, I'm not talking about the PlayStation brand specifically, but Sony. It's just so them. It's so tone deaf and so mismanaged, and it's like you'd think that would have been not an ace in the hole, but a nice little thing to have up their sleeve and go, look, no, this is one of our studios making this. But yeah, to get caught out like that, and it's like, yeah, but it's going to your biggest competitor included in their subscription on the same day that it comes to your platform for, I'm assuming, full retail.
And you know what else this gives Xbox? Like, we all know that they have EA Play, so they have pretty much all the EA sports titles on there, right? So they've got FIFA, Madden, the main EA ones. The other ones like NBA don't exist, and then they have NHL as well. They, I think 2 months ago, they put NBA 2K, like the latest one, on the service, and now they have baseball. So they have almost every sports genre on there. And it was announced a couple of weeks ago that the team that last year made 2K golf game, that were brought out by Take-Two Interactive. So now and they got the Tiger Woods license as well. So the Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2K is coming back, as well as EA are making a PGA golf game as well. So it's the first time in a while that actually, FIFA and PES hasn't been competition for a while. NBA 2K has dominated basketball for a long time. Madden's always been Madden. Like the titles are always pretty much one-sided. Whereas this time they're having a golf game that is roughly equal on EA and 2K side. And I bet you, even though they have EA Play, I bet you Xbox are going to try and get the golf game there.
Yep. And
if anything, for a subscription, why not get the people that buy the same game every year, and you have those services on your game? Like it's and to let Sony to let the only baseball game out there be just part of it. It's it is tone deaf, and I don't know why they don't see something like that happening in advance.
I really I don't know how
think that tight a grip MLB have.
I think that's the biggest issue. I mean, anybody who even starts to look at or analyze what's going on, industry wide, can see like where the trends are heading, right? But it just seems like they don't want to. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's very much like, no, the way we've done things has worked for, well, however long. And it's like, yeah, but you did that before and rested on your laurels after the kind of PS2 generation, and look what happened. You got crept up on, and the 360 wound up battering the PS3 into submission. It was cheaper. It was, everybody wanted to go there. Third parties were going there sooner or doing exclusive deals, or, you had the whole Call of Duty exclusive stuff. And yeah, all right, they managed to claw that back because, the roles are reversed last gen. But I don't know, it feels very, very different this time around. Feels like Microsoft are very much geared to go, this is our industry. And they're going to get swallowed if they don't do something in the next couple of years to kind of pivot. I'm not going to say they're done. They'll never be done. Even if they became just a studio publishing games that were bought by Microsoft, they're not going to be finished. But there's going to be some big changes, I think, unless they make some absolute radical changes.
And then with the MLB thing, and I don't agree with this a lot. But what is happening with the MLB thing is kind of what I thought they'd do with some of those Bethesda titles. And I don't want to talk about the whole Bethesda thing because we talked about a bunch. But the idea that, okay, MLB's day and date Game Pass, or you can buy it full price on PlayStation. And, you're getting it on PlayStation, but or you could just go to Game Pass and play it. That's what I was kind of picturing with the Bethesda stuff. But I just wanted to go back onto the Kojima thing because Jeff Grubb from VentureBeat talked about there was this random trailer that came on the PlayStation YouTube channel today. It's called Abandoned. It's a cinematic horror shooter or something. And, they talk about the studio that's making it Big Blue Box Games or something like that. Don't exist. You can't find anything about them. The person that's heading it up, you can't find anything about them, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's Kojima's next thing," because he did that with Metal Gear Solid 5, Phantom Pain, I think, when it was Moby Dick Studios, but it was really a hint towards the game itself because they were trying to hide the fact. So everyone thought this was Kojima doing his thing again. And Jeff Grubb basically just came out and said, well, not sure what it is, but it's definitely not Kojima, because from what I understand is that Kojima is in talks with Microsoft about their next game. And I had this feeling a few weeks ago, and it wasn't necessarily about him making the next game for Microsoft, but I had this weird thing with Kojima. Like back in 2016, there was such a mad rush to try and get him once he left Konami, that I had this thing the fact that Death Stranding came out to PC so soon after being on the Sony console. I was like, I have a feeling that he got away with a lot of stuff in his contract that normally people wouldn't get.
Yeah.
And I was thinking maybe Death Stranding does come to Xbox after a certain period of time, because Kojima is the one that can get away with that. And then, this is talking about Kojima possibly making a game. And that's an example, to bring it back what we were talking about before, about risk versus reward. it doesn't sound like Death Stranding sold enough on PlayStation side, which when it's a game that was only made in 3 years and it wasn't a massive studio Kojima had, like it was sizable. That tells me like barely 2 million. Like even games from Quantic Dream that sold just over 2 million were enough for Quantic Dream to keep making games with Sony. This tells me Death Stranding did not actually sell all that much. And Microsoft walk in and say, well you don't have to worry about the risk. Here's the money. Do you think he would go with them?
Yeah.
Straight up?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's some legacy and affiliation with Sony, but I think the people that he maybe had those relationships with are no longer there. They've moved on. It was Andrew House, wasn't it, that announced the partnership with him after? So he's gone. And yeah, I just think, again, I don't think he's a dreamer, right? He's got all these wacky, stupid ideas that he wants to produce and make, and cross genres and kind of hop around mediums and stuff. And that's if he wants to kind of invest and do that kind of stuff without the risk of knowing that it needs to make a return of X amount of money, the only kind of way to do that is to let Big Phil write you a check. There's no other way. Otherwise, it's got to be something that's kind of played safe. We know that that's not his style. So yeah, I absolutely can see it happening.
Yeah, well, my thing is, I think there is something coming out of all of this where all the first party studios seem like they are having, like, they're all like messaging each other on like Twitter, and they're, Cory Barlog from Sony Santa Monica and Neil Druckmann and Brian Intihar from Insomniac, like they're all messaging each other and they all seem really close. And I think part of that is like because Herman Holtz from Guerrilla is heading up, he's in charge of the first party studios. And then I think you have others that are in charge of like third party partnerships. And I think Jim Ryan has some say in those discussions about what deals they make with third parties. And I think they're going to slowly come apart. Shuhei Yoshida is part of like indies, which is funny because we're starting to see a bunch more indies, and the fact that on PlayStation Plus there's deals where like Oddworld is a free game on PlayStation Plus this month, and I think it was Marquette was PlayStation Plus, last and month, we had Bugsnax. Bugsnax was at the launch. Like, I think it's clear that the third party partnerships are not in as control as, say, the first party or the indie space, and third parties are just going to go to Xbox because they just want the deals.
Yeah, and they want the guaranteed cash. And even in situations like we've said with Outriders, like there will be more of, and MLB, there will be more of that this year. There will be much more of it, where it's like, oh, there's this kind of third party hit coming out, people are excited for it, and it just goes immediately to Game Pass. I don't think they're done with that kind of stuff. I think it's just going to continue to happen. I was thinking the other day, like it's no slight, right? If you look at the last generation, undoubtedly, like PlayStation, they just had the games, right? You know what I mean? Like they had the ones that people wanted to play. And take Horizon out of the equation and God of War. What's the next thing that you need a PlayStation for? Really, Quantic Dream are going multi-plat. MLB The Show couldn't even manage to stay just on PlayStation. Like, this is what I mean. Like, I think we're in for an interesting couple of years. And as the first parties at Microsoft start to really pull their shit together, and we see Senua's, whatever the second one's called, Hellblade 2. Yep. We see Fable. We see Perfect Dark. We start to see this stuff all come out. Landscape's going to look very different in a few years. You can't just lean on God of War and Spider-Man and Horizon as being, oh, we've got these three like tentpole things, because Ratchet and Clank always does all right. Got a specific audience. I don't see stuff like Days Gone getting sequels. Do you know what I mean? Like
Well, apparently Days Gone sold really well. It's weird. That's the only one that kind of sticks out because the critical acclaim does not match what it sold.
But again, does
And
that
so
come
I
from when
don't
it came
know.
out? It came out at a time where there was not a lot out. So you get that kind of effect of, oh, someone wants something new to play. But it's like when these
I don't know what
deals
you
and stuff
mean.
expire with your Final Fantasies. I don't know. It's a weird old industry.
And and you bring up a good point. Like, Housemarque has made games for PlayStation for forever, and then they're coming out with Returnal, which is big risk because it's a much bigger game than they've ever done because they've normally done their twin stick shooters and stuff. If this doesn't do well, and Sony's like, well, we might not put as much money into it or publish it next time, that might be a company that goes straight to Microsoft just to get the guaranteed money
And get
because
that
it's a
next
big
game made.
risk.
And I do think not
Yes.
necessarily that scenario will happen, but that game will flop. I don't think it'll do very well. I think it's for a very specific person, and I don't know how many of those people there are. I don't think it's going to do very well. Something like Kena, Bridge of Spirits, I think will do really well. And it's a budget title.
Yeah.
It's not full retail price, which for the art design and stuff. Who did that? Who's making it?
The new studio. They've never made anything before. I think it's owned by a couple of brothers who came from animation.
Yeah,
which
but
is
not,
why the animation.
Yeah, they're not owned by Sony. No, they're just publishing it because it's coming to PC.
No.
So you see, like stuff like that. It's
it'll-
like, all right, you've managed to get a good deal there on something that looks quite interesting. But even if it sells really well, I see it when that exclusivity window expires, it'll go to Game Pass.
Yeah, well, they're publishing the game as well themselves, so it's just all in their hands. So it's kind of like what Hellblade was when that came out because they publish it themselves.
Yeah,
They can only spend a certain amount of money, so they put it on PC and PlayStation, which had a larger install base. And then once they made those sales and got money in, they could then afford to do a port onto Xbox, and then eventually they got bought.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when you think of the PlayStation 4 generation, you're thinking of games like Until Dawn, and they, that studio, Supermassive, they ended up making a VR game, three VR games for PlayStation, but then they ended up signing an 8-game deal with Bandai Namco, and they're making their little horror anthology now. Like Quantic Dream are gone. Like, a lot of the second parties that they worked with, Ready at Dawn, who made Order 1886, now is owned by Facebook. All these second parties they normally deal with are either doing stuff themselves or getting bought by others just to keep the studios going. Yeah. So, and Sony don't want to buy things. I think they're expanding their studios. We'll wait to see if that's true, but they're not going to go on a spending spree. So,
no. And the fact that they've lost so many of those partnerships, what's to stop? I mean, I think the stuff that's Supermassive, what are they called? The ones you just mentioned that did Ready at Dawn. Sorry, Ready at Dawn. Pretty sure most of their stuff as it comes out is going immediately to Game Pass or is available on it. They did like Layers of Fear and stuff like that, wasn't it? The Man of Medine and all that is that not their anthology stuff?
Man of Medine, Little Hope, and then they've got House of Ashes coming out. Coming out this year. It's like a game every year, basically, since 2019.
Yeah, and it's all kind of immediately just appearing on Game Pass or in Games of Gold or whatever. Like, it's dangerous territory. And imagine, like, Quantic Dream put out their thing for this gen because they seem to have moved to being a one game a gen studio, which, fair enough. Like, they always do push the boat with the tech, the hyper-realism and stuff. They put their game out $70 on PlayStation, straight into Game Pass. And you can see it happening. There's nothing stopping it happening. So yeah, it's going to be a wild few years.
So how much time do we have left?
3 minutes.
All right. Well, I think we had a good convo then. I had the optional topics, but we can maybe discuss that on a quieter week. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for getting together. It was nice just having a little chat.
Yep, because we never miss a week. We'll figure it out one
Never
way or
miss a
another.
week. Well, you don't miss you don't ever miss a week.
Collectively, we don't. But yeah, back to normal next week. All three of us should be present and accounted for.
Cool. All right, I'll let you get back to your day, and thanks for everyone watching, and we'll see you again next week. We don't wash hands anymore.
Nah, we've given up on the wash out. I mean, you can wash your hands. Probably wash your hands.